Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Landy and you're watching Just Reissues. Today we have a very exciting album. Exciting for me. I want to share the experience with you guys. This is probably the most important album in my collection. With confidence, I can extend that concept to pretty much the entire jazz genre. It's one of the most important albums in the entire almost music industry, in my opinion. Because in terms of intended content and music complexity and orchestration, this album is really hard to beat. I'm talking about none other than Black, Brown and Beige by Duke Ellington. The album we're going to review today is the release by Columbia Records in 1958, but a little bit of history. This concept was initially released to the audience in 1943 at Carnegie Hall. Ellington, for over a decade prior to 1943, he's been thinking about presenting the audience with an extended piece of work that will serve as musical depiction of African American history. And he's been working in this concept of extended work for a while. If you look at, for example, 1935, he already experimented with Reminiscent in Tempo, which is a little piece that which is the piece that I enjoy a lot. I've listened to that a lot, and it's an album that I don't have. I'm going to mention a couple of albums in this video that I don't have, so if you have a way to connect me with any of this album, please leave your comments. I appreciate that very much. But anyway, this is an album that I don't have, so I listen to just digital versions online of Reminiscent in Tempo, and I encourage you to listen to that. It's fantastic. He wrote that, I believe, in commemoration of the passing of his mother, and it's a phenomenal extended piece, and you can see how he was very much working on the idea of extended pieces. It's like 13 minutes long, something like that, or probably longer, I think. So the idea of Black, Brown and Beige shifted in his head. For a while he wanted to present it as a symphony, and sometimes you're gonna find this album presented as a symphony, but then he shifted to the idea of a possible opera. But at the end, it wasn't either one of those. Even when sometimes you see this, if you type Black, Brown and Beige, sometimes the search come back as a symphony, as a jazz symphony by Duke Ellington. But anyway, at the end, he wrote a 45-minute piece divided in 3 parts for jazz orchestration. And it was presented, as I mentioned, in January the 23rd, 1943 at Carnegie Hall. Now, a couple of things happened here, because the concept of Black, Brown and Beige, Black identified as the slavery period, Brown as the emancipation, and Beige as the integration of the Black community into the society. This was a very strong concept for the 1943 audience. But in my opinion, the worst thing was the music critic, because they analyzed this from the classical point of view. And at the time, it was the belief that jazz performers should concentrate exclusively on entertaining. It was just music that was nightclub entertaining, and it shouldn't be considered anything else. And this idea of developing something at this level of complexity should have been left for those who knew what they were doing. That was the idea. Ellington didn't think that way. He was convinced that jazz could go toe-to-toe with classical music and any other form of art to deliver a strong message. And it's up to you guys to write in the comments if you believe he actually delivered the message the way he wanted to. So the critic was a little bit too harsh. I said a little bit, but it was quite harsh on the review of the performance. And after a couple of live performances, Ellington decided to put this entire work aside, and he never, ever touched this work on its original form. 15 years later, he is ready to bring this back to the audience. So this time, it's a more compressed, with some different arrangement, and the inclusion of Mahalia Jackson, which is an extremely important part of this new release. So let's get to review now the specific album that we have today. This one was released by Pure Pleasure Records, which is a label that is located in the UK. I don't have any affiliation with them, but I have to say that every album that I get from Pure Pleasure is fantastic. They are notorious for their analog mastering approach, and the result is absolutely incredible. The quality, the sound quality in this album is fantastic, and the presentation, if you see the front of the album, is a faithful representation of the 1958 Columbia Records release. But they added value to this presentation by including this on a gatefold with some beautiful pictures of the rehearsal. The lining notes that you're going to find here, I highly recommend. This is interesting, very interesting reading what you're going to find here. Here in the back, they actually refer to how each one of the pieces was written. Now, this presentation comes with two albums, okay? You have album number 1, which is where the entire concept resides, and album number 2, which is a bonus album. It has a number of retakes. You have pieces that doesn't really are not related to this entire presentation, but it fits very well in this album. I'm going to concentrate the review in the album number 1 because the whole idea Ellington wanted to deliver is concentrated in album number 1. I'm going to leave you guys to check album number 2. There's a couple of interesting things that happen in that album, and if you find them, leave your comment there. Things that you would think they would have removed, but they decided to leave that there, probably to have a closer connection between the audience and the backstage activity, how it was actually built. But let's concentrate on the album number 1, where the whole concept is actually concentrated. Album number 1, I wrote a couple of notes here. Let me see if I can find the notes. Where are my notes here? The notes. All right, so album number 1, it is divided in 6 different parts. 3 on side A or side 1, and the other 4, 5, 6 in the side 2. The way I perceive this album, side 1 is where the history is all concentrated. Side B is the spiritual and gospel value of the whole presentation. And it was very well put together. The whole 6 pieces is phenomenal. It's a fantastic work. Now, when the album opened, the feeling that you have initially is like a tone poem, which again, in my opinion, is part of Ellington trying to present jazz. I wouldn't say trying. I think he successfully presented jazz as a more refined form of art. But what really struck me when the album starts, the first song, which is the work song, called the work song, it's not the virtuosity. I mean, virtuosity is present across the entire presentation. But it's the narrative. It's how incredibly well defined the visual concept of labor, of the field opens in front of you, and you can easily see the slave in full force labor, with perfect description, with tones, with space, with color, with the whole field opens. So the idea of presenting this as a mono presentation is fantastic because the music is dead center. There are layers. You can feel that the drum opens closer and the brass instruments are in the back. But that's the sonic presentation. The visual presentation is pretty much stereophonic. You can easily perceive and feel the entire field opening in front of you. And when part 2 opens, it built from this structure already. It built from part 1, and it increased the feeling of motion. It's an identification of the initial feeling that you have. Then part 3 comes, and this one is called Light. When I'm looking at the original version, I cannot identify light in the original version. So I'm thinking it is a new arrangement, especially designed for this edition in 1958. But the music here, the tonality changes completely. The direction changes. The music gives me the feeling, what's called light. So it gives you the feeling of hope, feeling of resilience, feeling of healing. And the tonality had to change with this part 3. Then you're gonna flip the album, and this is where Mahalia Jackson started vocalizing for the first time. In my opinion, this is where the entire heart of this full presentation resides. When Mahalia Jackson starts singing, the melody already carries the message. The song is called Come Sunday, because the slaves were looking forward Sunday because it was the day that they could rest, but also was a day to reflect, was a day to prepare, was a day to pray. And they were looking forward Sunday. And the song is beautiful, beautifully presented by Mahalia Jackson. She said, referred to Come Sunday instead of Sunday, I think probably resembling the way that the slave used to pronounce it. I think that's how it sounds to me. But the whole presentation is incredible. The voice of Mahalia Jackson, transcendent, probably the only word that I can find, is incredible. So at this point, the emotion of the audience, the emotion of the listener is very intense, very high, if you connect with the album, of course. So here is where, in part number 5, is where the genius comes to mind. For me, it is that this is Ellington bringing the whole presentation down to balance, because you are emotionally very, very highly charged with Mahalia Jackson presentation. Remember, Mahalia Jackson was only added to this concept 2 weeks prior to the recording. So when you're listening to this, it truly feels like this is a long-term collaboration. These two masters working to create something perfect. But in fact, was a notification 2 weeks prior and just a couple of rehearsals, and that was enough to deliver this incredible message. It's absolutely fantastic. So now, with the emotion so high, Ellington decided to bring Ray Nance with a violin solo. This is what I believe is the delicate touch, the magic delicate touch on the entire presentation. Ray Nance violin solo, it will shake you. It's absolutely fantastic. It brings to me a feeling of reflection, and it prepares you for the finale. And the finale will be Mahalia Jackson again vocalizing. She's reciting now the 23rd Psalm. I don't know how many albums you guys know that finish with the Psalm. In my collection, I should probably Google how many albums finish with the Psalm. I'll give you a longer list, but in my collection, I only have this one and the 1965 John Coltrane, A Love Supreme, that finished also with Psalm. The way that they presented this, it landed beautifully. The voice of Mahalia Jackson is very soft. The music in the background is very soft, very calm. There is no excess, there is no crazy solo. It's just a very soft release that the melody is already carrying the message, but the voice nailed it, make the whole presentation literally perfect. So with this, the album starts to come to an end, and this is when you go, wow, this is incredible. This is absolutely fantastic. So I am not qualified, I don't believe I'm qualified to critique music of the level of complexity. What I'm giving you here is 100% my very humble opinion as a collector, as a listener. But what I'm going to tell you about this album, after I listened to the album several times, Ellington didn't write this album for applause. This album was written for awareness. This is not this is no background music, I'm trying to say. This album pretty much forces you to sit steady, listen to the music, and come with an open mind and an open heart, and allow this music to challenge you because of the presentation, the type of complexity, and how Ellington orchestrated the whole presentation. It has this tonality of classical presentation, which is why sometimes you see that presented as a symphony. I don't believe it's a symphony in any way. I truly believe it's a jazz presentation, because as a symphony, it does share the same ambition, the same scale of seriousness as a symphony, but this one, it really draws from blues, it really draws from swing, it's very spiritual. It allows space for improvisation, and it's a jazz ensemble written, grounded in the black music tradition rather than the European tradition, which is what it was compared to at the time. So this presentation may not get to you at first listen. It's not the kind of album that have instant gratification. This album is the type of music kind of challenge you, because when you open yourself for this type of work, you start to develop your ear. You start to build a kind of musical literacy that eventually will allow you to see beauty in complexity. And music that used to be very difficult in the past now becomes the most meaningful pieces of music that you ever heard. And you start to see intention, you start to see architecture, you start to see, you have to feel emotions underneath the obvious. And a brand new door opens, and the feeling, the sense of musical enjoyment scales to a very high level at that time. And if this presentation helped you in any way to find that door, and if you open the door and step in, then my job is done. With this, we come to an end. It's been a pleasure to have you guys in my studio. We'll see you again next week. This is Landy with Just Reissues, signing off.